The Israelis have this idea, similar to what we had, of manifest destiny. It is our destiny to control this much.
But the problem with this project was that Palestine was not an empty land.
Israel attacks in 1948. They did a massacre at a place called Deir Yassin, where they literally just pulled out machetes and began chopping Palestinians to death.
It must leave Israel with security, and therefore Israel cannot return to the indefensible 1967 lines.
The whole West Bank looks like a collection of concentration camps. No other way to describe it. People are not allowed to get in, people are not allowed to get out.
Today, the Middle East is on fire. Gaza.
Israel does not target Palestinian civilians. We target Hamas terrorists.
The West Bank.
We will continue to build a fulfilling Jewish reality. This reality definitively buries the idea of a Palestinian state, simply because there is nothing to recognize and no one to recognize.
Lebanon.
A 100 targets hit in 10 minutes across Lebanon, according to Israel. In central Beirut, the wave came without warning. Hope of a ceasefire short-lived, then came confusion, chaos, and carnage.
Syria.
In February, Israel reportedly sprayed chemical substance on agricultural lands and restricted the access of Syrian farmers to their lands.
In the news, each one gets its own headline, its own explanation, its own timeline. But what if they're not separate stories? What if there's one vision, one specific map that connects every single front line?
What is the goal?
The greater Israel.
Greater Israel.
Greater Israel.
And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
What happens in Palestine does not stay in Palestine.
I'm Saeed Jalajil, and this is 4Piece Media. We're an independent media platform inspired by the resilience of the Palestinian people and committed to amplifying underrepresented voices. Today, we're examining one of the most controversial ideas in modern politics, Greater Israel. The Greater Israel is not a conspiracy theory. It is not a fringe religious fantasy. It's a map. At its most ambitious, it envisions a Jewish state stretching from the Nile River in Egypt to the Euphrates in Iraq. 7 sovereign nations, 120 million people, all within its borders.
The Israelis have this idea, similar to what we had, of manifest destiny. It is our destiny to control this much. Their idea is pretty much all of Palestine, about half of Lebanon, about half of Syria, all of Jordan, and a great swath of Saudi Arabia.
Ambassador Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, he put it very clearly that the great zealots and many of the Israeli leaders view Greater Israel as control from a big slice of Egypt all the way to Iraq.
Now, you would think that seems pretty ambitious. All you have to do is look at an Israeli uniform right now. They have a symbol of what they call the Greater Israel, which is everything I just told you. That's what their vision is. That's what they want.
So where does an idea this sweeping actually come from? It started with a diary entry. 1898, Theodor Herzl, the father of modern Zionism, wrote that the Jewish homeland should stretch from the Brook of Egypt to the Euphrates. He wasn't being poetic. He was quoting a divine covenant, Genesis 15:18.
Theodor Herzl put forward his program for a Jewish state in Palestine, but the problem with this project was that Palestine was not an empty land. It was inhabited by an Arab population that had been there for centuries.
After World War I, Britain took control of Palestine. They facilitated mass Jewish migration while simultaneously promising independence to Palestinians. 2 promises, 1 land. Out of that tension came a harder ideology. In the 1920s, Ze'ev Jabotinsky turned the vision into a doctrine. He called it the Iron Wall. He argued the Palestinians would never voluntarily give up their land.
Jabotinsky pointed out that for us to establish our state, we're going to have to expel them. They would have to use force to basically expel the indigenous people, the Palestinians that are already there.
His slogan, both sides of the Jordan. But this wasn't only the far right. David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, wrote to his son in 1937 that accepting a small state was just a start. Once Israel built its strength, the rest would follow. So in 1948, when Ben-Gurion declared independence, he left something out, the borders, deliberately. Then, in 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan.
The Arab states and the Palestinian people reject this. And the reason they reject it is they didn't understand why the Israelis were getting 55% of the land where they own 7. If you own 7% of the land and you're getting 55%, what happens to the other 48? Like, are you going to ethnically cleanse the place? And so they rejected it. So Israel attacks in 1948. They invade and they begin a sequence of conquest events that the Palestinians call the Nakba, which means catastrophe. And one of the things that they did was they did a massacre at a place called Deir Yassin, where they literally just pulled out machetes and began chopping Palestinians to death. And the reason, of course, for doing this was to create panic, and it works. And a huge event unfolds then, where Palestinians are fleeing their homes out of fear that there will be more of these hacking to death events. And the reason that they do this is because their goal is 80% Jewish, 20% Arab, and they're not going to be able to get that unless they can somehow convince the Arab population to leave the land. And they do. They end up conquering 78% of Palestine. So they don't get 55, they get 78%. The Gaza Strip and the West Bank are all that's left of the Arab enclave.
This was the first time the vision moved from the diary to the dirt. Every line drawn since that day has been treated as a temporary, every expansion permanent. And Israel was quick to take advantage of that ambiguity.
The June 1967 war was a turning point in the history of the Middle East.
In just 6 days, Israel tripled its territory. The West Bank, Gaza, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights seized from Syria, Israel now controlled land far beyond anything the UN had ever allocated.
It must leave Israel with security, and therefore Israel cannot return to the indefensible 1967 lines.
But holding that much territory created a new problem. How do you maintain control over the millions of people who don't want you there? You leave the borders undefined, and you build a strategy around that ambiguity. In 1982, a former Israeli foreign minister official named Oded Yinon published a strategy paper. His argument: Israel's long-term security required the fragmentation of surrounding Arab states, broken into tiny, weak, ethnic enclaves that could never threaten Israel again. That idea resurfaced in 1996. A policy paper written for a young Benjamin Netanyahu, titled A Clean Break, took it further. The advice was blunt: walk away from the peace process and weaken Israel's neighbors, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, through deliberate destabilization. The logic was simple. You don't need to take the land. You break the states around you until there's no one left to stop you. By the time the world was watching Gaza, Israel had already reached another border. So what does that look like in practice? If you want to see what this looks like on the ground right now, start with Gaza. The line is called the Yellow Line, a military border drawn by the IDF that cuts across the northern part of the Gaza Strip. It was supposed to be a temporary ceasefire boundary. Instead, the IDF is using it to control 50% of the Gaza Strip.
On the ground, private Israeli contractors have been working for months to erase Gaza. One house at a time. According to Israeli reports, these contractors get paid over $1,000 a day for the destruction.
On the Israeli side of that line, entire neighborhoods are being demolished for good. In the West Bank, 700,000 settlers are already living on occupied land, and there is a plan to make it irreversible. It's called E1, a strategic wedge designed to cut the West Bank in half, severing East Jerusalem from any future Palestinian state.
And he said the move had a clear goal. Smotrich said it, quote, definitively buries the idea of a Palestinian state simply because there is nothing to recognize and no one to recognize.
To the north, the same pattern. In southern Lebanon, Israel has pushed Hezbollah forces north of the Litani River and is preventing residents from returning to 60 villages in the area.
Katz said, quote, the principle is clear. If there is terror and rockets, there will be no homes and residents, and the IDF will remain inside.
Israeli forces remain in 5 strategic locations across the Lebanese border, indefinitely. Many fear another long-term occupation. Some Israeli officials are openly advocating for exactly that. In Syria, following the fall of the Assad regime in late 2024, Israel has moved past the Golan Heights entirely. Israeli tanks now sit on Mount Hermon, 20 kilometers from Damascus. The Defense Ministry says they intend to stay for an unlimited amount of time. Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, each reported as a separate operation, each justified as security, each border temporary.
The whole West Bank looks like a collection of concentration camps. No other way to describe it. People are not allowed to get in, people are not allowed to get out. The settlers saw the war in Gaza and now in Iran as a huge historical opportunity for them.
One picture, one mission, and the people behind it are no longer hiding what they want.
אתה מתחבר לחזון?
מאוד.
לישראל השלמה.
אם אתה שואל אותי, אנחנו כאן צריך להבטיח את המשך קיומה. וזה אני רואה כמשימה גדולה.
Netanyahu has traded secular language for something older. He now invokes Amalek, a biblical enemy the scripture commands must be utterly destroyed. Women, children, livestock.
אנחנו קראנו בפרשת השבוע, זכור את אשר עשה לך עמלק. אנחנו זוכרים ואנחנו פועלים.
And then there's Bezalel Smotrich. In 2023, he stood behind a map of Israel that included all of Jordan. He stated his goal, maximum territory, minimum Arab population. These aren't fringe voices. This is the Prime Minister of Israel and the Finance Minister. But behind every map is a person. Avi Shalom served loyally in the IDF in the 1960s. He believed in the state. He defended it.
The army in which I had served, it was the Israel Defense Forces, now became the brutal police force of a brutal colonial power. And my disenchantment with Israel has continued ever since. But it really accelerated in the last 2 years because of the Israeli atrocities in Gaza. Netanyahu claims that Israel is the only safe place for Jews in the world. But because of his record, because of his brutality, because of the genocide that he has been perpetrating in Gaza, Israel has become the least safe place in the world for Jews. And that is the great tragedy. And what they're all saying is not in our name. Israel doesn't represent them, and Israel doesn't speak for them.
Israel has always said it seeks peace. A piece of Gaza, a piece of Syria, and a piece of Lebanon. Peace to them is the yellow line becoming a border, the West Bank becoming settlements, Lebanon pushed back, Syria occupied. Greater Israel is being built in plain sight, one buffer zone, one settlement, one demolition at a time. The map is being redrawn while the world watches. What happens to the millions of people living within the map when the mission is finally complete? I'm Saeed Jalajil, and this has been 4Piece Media. 4Piece Media was founded by people from across the globe, inspired by the resilience of the Palestinian people, and driven by a commitment to challenge misinformation and amplify underrepresented voices. Today, our work extends beyond Palestine to cover global politics, human rights, international affairs, and the issues shaping our world. If you value deeper context behind the headlines, consider subscribing and follow our work. Thank you for watching.